Ayin Beis, Volume 1. We concluded chapter 123. And we're in the Maimer, V'yochel lo yochel Yosef, the Sapik. That Yosef could not control himself. And I feel a little like Yosef too. I can't control myself either. But maybe different ways. So, I want to just give a little overview of where we're at because it's a very dense and critical juncture here, where the Rebbe Rashab is bringing together literally over 100 chapters, I would say, maybe more, maybe less. So if you've been following along here, I'm not going to repeat everything I've said, but I will say that there are three main discourses, Mamorim, that the Rebbe Rashab is using as the basis of what he's discussing here now. One is a Maimer from Chai Sara Tovkuf Samach Vov, which Alter Rebbe said. Those years, Jacobson, the Alter Rebbe would explain almost every Shabbos explanation of Zohar. So there in the Parsha Chai Sara, the Alter Rebbe explained then the whole subject matter of Sfiris. And the truth is that though that same year is also discussing the previous weeks, the whole idea of Keches and Levushim and Eris and Kalim. So as you all know, the Alter Rebbe is the founder of Chassidus Chabad. And besides the Tanya, the real infrastructure of Chassidus is in these years and these Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe. And when you study them, today we have all the texts, you can really see the development of Chassidus. And so learning Ayin Beis, which itself is like a Rambam, a compendium, a magnum opus that collects so much from so many places. It's vital, if you really want to appreciate it, to understand it according to the sugyas, the subjects that the Alter Rebbe developed those weeks, those years. And primarily they're the years Tovkuf Samach Beis through Tovkuf Ayin Gimel when he passed away. So it's really 11 years. Even though the Alter Rebbe, we say, established Chassidus years earlier in Tovkuf Mem already, meaning almost 40 years earlier, 30 years earlier. But as we all know, until the Alter Rebbe was in Yutas Kislev and came out of prison, the Torahs were said in brief, relatively, as they call them, liyozhne. The Maimorim were short, and therefore you cannot yet see it blossom into what it become. It's primarily after Tovkuf Nun Tes, when he came out of prison, Tovkuf Tanya was printed in Tovkuf Nun Zayin. Yeah, he came out of prison Tovkuf Nun Tes. Primarily after that, when he moved from the Liyozhne to the Yadi, when began really the Maimorim developing literally extensively themes, as the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid told him when he was in prison, the Alter Rebbe, that he should now not only continue, but he should continue with and expand it all. So in discussing these themes, you really can understand, like when the Alter Rebbe Rashab discusses something, if you really want to understand, you have to go back to the original sugyas, the original themes. So I identified three main sugyas, so to speak, three main Maimorim. One is the Chai Sara one, where the Alter Rebbe primarily talks there about Sfira from the word Sapir, Behirus, the clarity and transparency. But the Tzemach Tzedek, in his classical way, when he explains the Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe, includes and adds into it the other interpretations as well. Number and story, and as we learned in this chapter, also book, Sefer. Now, that doesn't mean the Alter Rebbe didn't refer to it in other places, but he brings it all together in that Chai Sara Maimer. And I see when you learn that Maimer, you really can see that the Rebbe Rashab is actually elaborating on it. All these pages, literally over 30, 40 chapters now. From when he began discussing Sfiris, which goes back to where? Pei Gimel, 83, and we're now at 123. So it's 40 chapters ago. Sorry. So these 40 chapters is built on that. A second series of discourses is Simanik Chesem, which is a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, and it refers to Simanik Chesem Lipcha. It refers to the tefillin. And many of the ideas that we learned in the last chapter are based on those discourses. Where in tefillin, you have a few elements. You have, within the boxes, you have cloth. You have the parchment, upon which you have the 4 parshas written, the words. The boxes themselves are then closed up in black boxes, so white and black. And then you have the ritzuas, the straps, that api halacha can be made from the cloth, from the same material that you wrote the letters on. Not necessarily that it is made, but it could be made. And there you also have the din that he's bringing here, the halacha, Mukav Gvil, that when you write the letters on tefillin, same thing of course, mezuzah and Sefer Torah, every letter has to be surrounded by cloth, by the parchment, meaning that every letter has to be distinguishable and not attached. So that's a second series of Maimarim that the Rebbe Rashab is gleaning from. And the third is the Maimarim of B'chukaisei Chukas and Shcheirani, the Shir Hashirim of the Alter Rebbe, which was said in the years Tovkuf Samach Daled and Tovkuf Samach Hey, where he discusses the ideas of Esi Sachkik and Esi Saksiv, basically engraved letters and written letters. I'm mentioning number one for the record, because I want you to know, even though I know we're trying to understand these pages here, but to really appreciate this, and a lot what informs me when I teach it here is looking at the sources. Sources, to study them together would take more than a day. It would take days and days. I'm telling you, if you want to look, you can look. Hopefully one day you'll be at that place where you really want to look inside and study them, because when you understand those Maimarim, you can understand this far, far better. A lot of things that are unclear sometimes when we're learning this is unclear, because when you look there, you really see the context. Because the Rebbe Rashab is not quoting everything that's said in those Maimarim. He's taking it further. So I'll sum up basically, based on all those Maimarim, where we're at and how he's explaining it all. So as I discussed in the previous class, we're talking about the interface here that the Spheres offer. The interface is the connection between existence and the divine. And Spheres play a critical role, because these are the building blocks. We can say the tools, the instruments, with which God creates and with which we reconnect. So essentially they're like that interface, the intermediary that connects the two realities. And the Spheres themselves are made of Eris and Kalim. As I explained briefly, Er represents the source, and the Keli represents the source's intention. So, to use an example, let's say, of code, programming code, any programming code, when you look at it, you'll see there's general principles that say that we're now writing a code, let's say, for a certain type of website. And then there's specific code that tells you what that page, each page should look like. So you have, the general code is just representing the general purpose of what you want to achieve. And then you have the specifics that break it down into details. So that's essentially what Eris and Kalim do, each on their own level. Now, in discussing ultimately the point of the Spheres is not just to give us a number which gives us the structure of existence, not just to tell a story, but to be transparent. You want to have a transparency. Just like in a relationship. The ultimate relationship is that there's no veils. There's nothing that separates between two people. They can have a complete transparent flow of communication. The same thing here, we want to have a complete transparent connection with Elokus, with the divine. The challenge, of course, is that we are not on our own naturally inclined to that, because of the great concealments that take place. So therefore there's a long, extensive and comprehensive process which we have to employ in order to climb this ladder. So all these chapters we're going and climbing that ladder to the point where we're trying to understand how we reach that type of clarity and behirus, that type of brightness. So first he talked about how the kelim are the bright. But then ultimately it comes down to how it is in the level of Eir. And in Eir itself, there's Eiris as they are in the kelim, there's the Eiris as they are higher than the containers, then there's the Eiris that they're higher, the kelim and the Eiris that are higher than Atzilus, which really is just levels, very different levels, of how this expression came to be. In other words, you could basically say the big question is this: how did from an infinite, plain, vanilla white, transparent reality come such a multifarious, which basically means a diverse existence like ours? Or to put it in more personal terms, how from a concept did it come to words and letters? How can an energy become matter? How can something that has no shape and form take on shape and form? Where exactly does that happen? Briefly, the answer is that in the divine source, which is neither shape or form, nor the opposite of shape, shapeless or formless, he wants both. So therefore he sends two messages, where one is going to become shape and form, that's going to be containers, and one is shapeless and formless, that's going to be air. But he wants them to meet, so the air will go through a diminishing for it to be able to meet the containers, and the containers will go through a process of maturity that they won't begin being strong containers, they'll be very small seed, and they'll develop and develop, and hopefully at some point they'll be able to meet and join, and then as they join, fuse till they become one and can return to the source, which was beyond shapeless and beyond shape. You follow that? So when you talk about shapeless and shape, really that's what we're talking now. Something that's undefined and something defined. In different words, that's Eir and Keli. In other words, the purest shapelessness is pshittus, complete shapelessness. Where do you have the purest form? The brightest form of shapelessness. You have to be completely beyond containers. So that's where you establish that the purest form is not container, it's not pnimius hakelim even, it's not Eir and Atzilus, which is already manifesting in a structure. It's not the kelim higher than Atzilus, which is at the end of the day still letters, even though they're engraved letters, but they're still, in some way they darken, because in some way they do conceal something. Not in their own state, as we said, they're like letters of light. So what they are is completely revealed. But compared to higher levels, there's something that they're not revealing. Now here he doesn't say it, but then in engraved letters too, when I looked in the Maimarim, the Mittler Rebbe adds, there's engraved itself two levels. He does mention it later, I think Reish Mem Zayin, if I recall correctly. Where he talks about engraved letters, there's engraved, where you just engrave a letter in a stone, and then how it was in the Luchas, it was through and through. And that's even in letters itself, even a higher level. Because through and through, as the Mittler Rebbe says, the Rebbe Rashab explains in Samach Vov and Etter in a few places, through and through is lacking two things. With through and through, you can't, number one, it doesn't have an achiza, you can't even call it letters. Because the Mem and Samach, like by miracle, how do they stand? So it's like not even an achiza. That's what he calls it. The second thing is you can't fill it up with ink. When it comes to engraved letters in stone, if it's not through and through, at the end of the day you could fill it up. Because there's some space there. Something has been done. And through you can't do anything. What are you going to do?
Slip right through.
Right. So it's considered to be even. So I think of Reish Mem Zayin. Yeah, right.
There's no shadow. When you engrave letters on a stone, there's a shadow.
Yeah, chapter Reish Mem Zayin.
There's got to be a shadow.
It means like this: if it's a bright stone, think of, let's say it's a diamond, and you engrave a letter in it. In the place where the letter is, it's not going to be as bright as outside of the letter. That's what it means.
Depends what type of kicker is, if it's dug out or it's boilet.
No, either way.
Isn't it?
Boilet for sure. Boilet means you have to add something, but
Scratch around it, it sticks out.
Isn't it?
yeah. But either way, the fact there's a letter, that alone is telling you it's revealing something else. So however you twist it, it has to be something different than the stone, because that's why it's a letter, or else you wouldn't see a letter. Point is, all these are physical examples. When you look in the Kutei Torah, for example, you see the Alter Rebbe Mamish says these words. He says, though we can't really envision something that is letters within something else, but we have an example in Eish Achkik. It's only examples. All these are examples. So don't think of it in physical terms. It's an example of teaching us. This is what Chassidus really is at its best. It's teaching you how to think differently. Usually we think of things in one way. Someone say to you, letters? Oh yeah, I know what letters are. And Chassidus right here, we already have 4 levels of letters. There's letters on ink on paper. There's letters that are engraved. There's letters, like I said, through and through. There's the concept of letters. So the point is, it's teaching us how to take a reality we know and right away making it more sublime. That's already a more ruchnistic state of being. That's the whole point. So besides Aveda of actually refining the world, the fact that we are able to relate to something ruchnis as opposed to gashmis, that itself is the purpose of Chassidus. Is to make you a more ruchnistic person. When you're a more ruchnistic person, automatically, you're a more spiritual person, you're going to be a more refined person. Anyway, so the bottom line is that these examples are all meant to help us climb and understand things. So now, in the Kelim of Kesser, as we learned in the previous chapter, this is going back to the beginning of the Maimer. So this Kelim of Kesser is engraved. They're engraved letters. Engraved letters meaning that they're made of the same substance. Whereas in Atzilus, it's already something else, which is united. In Biyah, it's something else that's not united. Right there, you have yourself a whole bunch of levels. As I said, if you really want to appreciate it, you have to begin from the bottom. Our reality is the easiest one to relate to. In our reality, most of it is all concealed. It's Eris inside of Kelim, Kelim inside of Levushim, Levushim inside of Levushim, and how many levels? God knows. Depends how dark you feel today. But one thing is for sure, there's many, many concealments. It's interesting in Perek Vav in Tanya, just learned it a little while ago in Chitas. So remember there's Hagah, who speaks about Klippa, and then he says, so what's Klippa? He says, Yud Sfiris. He says the Klippas Negen El Mazeh. And with Shabahem Alubish Yud Sfir is the Asiya, Shabahem Alubish Yud Sfir is the Asira, Shabahem Alubish Yud Sfir is the Beriya, Shabahem Alubish Yud Sfir is the Atzilus. Alter Rebbe literally spells it out. That's the picture. So envision it like we have a spark that's covered up, not just by a container, but by many containers, by then garments. And then there's throw in a few veils and shrouds and curtains and cloaks. So what do you have left? You come in to this world, I have no clue, I can't see anything. Yeah, you can't see no God. It's all concealed. But it's not airtight. Hope is not lost because we can start taking off garments. It's not stripping it, so to speak. You do that, number one, with your mind, by understanding. Just like, for example, if you use it psychologically speaking, someone comes to you and they share with you an issue, problem. So you can look at it at the surface level. My problem is, I'm not getting along with my wife. Or my problem is, I'm having an issue, can't find a job. Or I don't know what my purpose in life is, whatever it is. So that's the tip of the iceberg. That's just that's the symptom. What's the cause? The cause is you need to unveil, you need to unclothe it, and get rid of the veils to see what is the root of it. And the root is far more complicated than the symptoms. So essentially, the Chassidus teaches you how to unveil it and start realizing these deeper things. But you have to be, as I always say, the first prerequisite is Reishis Chach Miras Hashem. If it's all about you, you're not going anywhere. Chassidus cannot be understood by someone who thinks only about himself, because it's antithetical. You can learn Gemara and be a very selfish person. You can learn Chassidus and be selfish, you'll never get one word of it, because the whole point of it is not to be you. So if it's all about you, there's no way you're going deeper. Why should you go deeper? You're comfortable here. So it forces you to have to go beyond how you see it and see it in a new way. That's the difficulty for many people, because they can't, especially as adults, give up. They can't let go of the way they do things. That's their habit. That is the biggest trap to any growth, and definitely to learning Chassidus and understanding it. So yeah, you can do mitzvahs, manashim elamad, God, because you grew up with it, culture, or whatever, you feel you have to do it, so you do it. But if you want to talk about refining, thinking different, how could you think different if you're thinking what you're thinking now? Thinking different means that you're open to thinking different. If you're not open to it, you're not going to think different. So basically, we're climbing here, and we're getting to the point where a sfira is now no longer, he's not even talking about containers anymore. Now he's talking about pure brightness. But then the question that was he asked was, what do you mean pure brightness? How could they? So what is this? Like he's the question. What kind of Megala? So to understand that, you have to go the other way. See, by us, the word Gili means something is concealed, and you're revealing it. So from the perspective of Kalim, it's very beautiful what he said till now. We live in a concealed world, and now you're revealing to us, okay, great, we're getting to hear the secrets. What's going on behind the scenes. So we hear that there's Atzilus, we hear there's Eirus and Atzilus, we hear there's Keach HaGvul, great, Keach HaBli Gvul. But now that we've reached already to the place of the Keach HaBli Gvul, that's where the real Eir is, the real clarity. As I said, what's with least veils, with least concealments, is the actual divine, infinite energy. What's the Gili there? Who are you being Megala for? You're in a state of Gili there. The whole thing is Gili. Right? That's the question. So again, if you said it's talking about containers, and you say containers conceal, now I've discovered that containers also reveal, not like garments. Great. Yaakov reveals, Lavan wants to conceal. But now that you're already there, in the level of revelation, there's no more Kalim. What's Gili? What kind of Shaykh Gili there? And here you have to turn the whole thing upside down. Here it goes the other way around. You know what's Gili? Because Etzem is higher than Gili. Till now we were talking about lower than Gili. Concealment, yes, so it's a great achievement that you have a little revelation. Now you're talking the other way around, that the Etzem is built in Mizgala, basically. The Etzem is beyond revelation. So the mere fact that there's a state of revelation is itself a chiddush. What's that? That's the levush. That God needs to do something to reveal Himself. Because He's fundamentally beyond revelation, just like He's beyond concealment. This is the key shift when He moves over from Keli to Er. So from Keli, you're going in perspective, okay, I'm a recipient, I'm a student, I don't know so much, and the teacher teaches more and more and more and more. Okay, I've reached a point of absolute clarity. But now, in the state of clarity, someone says, okay, what's left? That's it, I'm here. What's our Gili? Why do you need to say Behirus? The answer is because you're not here. You know where you reached? You reached to the state of a reflection. Because the core essence is beyond revelation altogether. Like he said here in the last this chapter and the last. So here comes Heid V'Hadad, that the whole thing is a levush. Because Etzem is B'chal not Shaykh to Gili. Beyond Gili. So now, and everyone, I've said it twice already, but do you understand what we're talking about here? It's critical to understand the shift here. So we're not talking about from concealed to revealed, we're talking now from Etzem, a core that's beyond revealed, and bringing it into revelation. Here, Gili is actually a Yerida. For us, Gili is a Aliyah. For Atzmus, Gili is a Yerida, so to speak.
But is this above Sephiris? Meaning,
This is the first place where Spheris, the Gili, see, for us Spheris reveal in a dark world, we're starting to get some revelation. For Spheris, Lamaila is what God uses to reveal His core, which is beyond.
Because it all started at Spheris was Lashon Bayer.
That's where we're going to now. But you see, this is the climb. That's why in the beginning, his question all the way in the beginning, Perek Pei Gimel 83, which we're now going to answer this chapter, was that question: how there's Spheris in Eir HaBli Gvul. We understand Eir HaGvul, there's Spheris because they create a structure, and then we climb and we reveal. But in Eir HaBli Gvul, where's their Spheris? So we're going to learn that Eir HaBli Gvul, the mere fact that it's Eir, is already means that it's a Sphira. So the meaning of Sphira now is not Sphira as in Chochma Bina. Sphira means revelation. It's just Gili. It's revealed. That's what real meaning of Sphira Behir is. Sphira number, you're already talking a structure. Number. Story is something in between. You're telling a story. Now we're coming to a point of the purest form of Sphira. The mere fact that something is revealed is already a major thing.
He says that there's S Spheris thing.
Okay, 1 second. We didn't finish. We're going to learn this. Yeah. Exactly right. That's going to be the question, obviously. There's going to be two elements. You're going to see the Sridus Ein Ketz, and the Sridus Es Sridus. It's all. Remember, at the end of the day, it's an interface. So now, let's go back to. I just wanted to give this overview because it's critical to really appreciate this whole shift here. So Hoid v'Hadar was a whole explanation that Hoid and Hadar are both a lavush. Hoid is the Etzem HaMelech, the king, the majesty, as he's on his own, doesn't need anyone. Back to a few chapters back, yeah. And then there's Hadar. And that's B'nai Hadar Melech. That's the Melech as he's expressed, as he's recognized. The details. Not details Chacham Bina, but the details as his majesty is revealed and there's something is added. Revam hadras melech. Because if the king has a majesty on his own, why is the din b'revam hadras melech? What do you need people for? Clearly, something is added. Not that it necessarily adds in him, but we said, number one, it crowns him, and then he gets the higher malchus, or he has it already in there, but it's concealed and it's revealed afterwards. However you explain it, the bottom line is, there is now, we see that the king on his own is be'etzem reimamus, is beyond it all. Hadar is that revelation. Now, these are the two levels of Keser.
It's a level of Hayid, not a level of Hadar, right?
Even Hadar, even Hayid is not Atzmus.
Right, but it says Aniyah Vayel Shnisi could be an Hayid. Nothing changes it.
Yeah, in a way, you could. I think he used somewhere Aniyah Shem Leishanis. Didn't he use it somewhere?
When the people coronate the king, it does affect him in a way. But that's in the Lucha, whatever.
Okay, there's in the Mashal, but in the Nimshal it's different. In the Nimshal, it affects him because God wants to be revealed. So there's a moral. That's what it is. He wants to be revealed. The main answer with affecting God is that everything happens in Eir. Because Atzmus is not affected, because it's like Eir does not affect the Moir. But that's a different discussion. I don't want to go there right now. Now, these are the two levels of Keser. So now we've gone all the way up to Keser. I just want to state this for the record again, because I know it keeps confusing everybody. I saw Beferish, the Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek writes it specifically. When we say Keser, he says Keser includes everything, all Ilmas Ein Sof, including Lifnei Tzimtzum. Keser is a name here that includes everything, all the levels. So we're not talking about all the levels. What does this mean? It means specifically in the microcosm, Keser Vatsilis is what the macrocosm is the Eir Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. That's in general the picture. But he does say specifically, when we say Keser here, we're talking about everything. Esesfir Sagnuzis, Atik and Arich is talking about the whole higher. In other words, Atzilus is representing here existence, and Keser is representing beyond existence. Not that Keser of Atzilus is Lifnei Tzimtzum, it's not Lifnei Tzimtzum, but when you speak about it in these terms, you're talking about all the levels as they emerge. But then they're explained in more detail, you can speak about it.
For an Atik, it has this good in Lifnei Tzimtzum, so it doesn't have to.
No, it doesn't say. No, Atik, it depends what you talk, microcosm, macrocosm. There's no, what's a microcosm, macrocosm? Atik in the microcosm is not for the Tzimtzum. There is, Ke'ein Atik, there's a similar level like Atik, that's at the beginning of the Kav, that's what it says. But that's a separate...
Is that what he refers to as Pneumius of Atik?
Generally, now Pneumius Atik is talking about, as I said, Keser, now we're talking about all the levels. Everything above Atzilus is included in Keser. Pneumius Atik is the highest, Chutzenius Atik is the lower. But right now we're saying that so in Atik itself, in Keser itself, which is the crown, which is the king, Hoid is Atik, and Hodar is Arich. One is removed.
It's all beyond the structure still, because in this scenario...
Yeah. And we're talking about Ur now, we're not talking about containers. So, here goes like this. So here we spoke about two levels here. I'm just summing up this last chapter because it was a dense chapter, but I'll sum it up here. Okay. So it goes like this. Hoid v'hodar levashta, we say. Hoid v'hodar levashta. You've dressed yourself and clothed yourself in hoid and hodar. So etzem is beyond both. What's the difference? Hodar, let's start with hodar. Hodar is the revelation of the Malchus. Like we said before, when the nation gathers together, the nation's crowning. What does this mean? That means that we are able to relate to God and praise Him, but in a form of shlila, by negating. Thank you. But Pnimis HaKeser, you can't even negate. He said this is what Mashiach will reveal, Hoid v'hodar, Tash v'olav, Teshava, what did you say, Tash? Teshava olav. Because Mashiach is Pnimius Atik, but he will reveal it. Okay. So, both of them are Lavush, because even Eir Sof, even Atik, or in other words, Etzem Eir, is also Lavush, because compared to the Etzem, everything is a garment. The difference between Atik and Arich here, and he gave the example of the sun. The light of the sun does not tell you about the actual sun. It tells you that the sun has light, but it's not at all a taste of the actual body, the ball of the sun. So same thing, Eir and Sof, even the highest level, that reveals it, but it's not the etzem itself. The difference is Atik reveals the etzem, and compared to lower levels, it's etzem ha'er. It's a core type of energy. And Hadar is a garment to the garment, so to speak. The way he put it was like this. So Eir, in the level of Eir Atzmi, Atik in its own level, is compared to the Etzem, compared to the core, it's only a garment. But compared to Eir, to every type of revelation, it's a very core type of energy. When you talk about Hadar, on the other hand, even in Eir, it's not an Atzmi. It's only the expression of the energy itself. So really what we're talking is like this. The Etzem is beyond expression. Compared to that, everything is a lavush. Once it's expression, there's also a core expression, which is the king as he is in his own majesty without anyone. And how he expresses himself, or how it's revealed, that's Hadar already. That is the true garment. So let's put it this way.
Lavush to himself?
I'm sorry?
Lavush to himself, right? Like, what does it mean?
Compared to the Etzem, it's another level. It's not the Etzem. It's not the core. Think of it like this. Yeah, it's a lavush that is.
It's meant for Hadar. Is that the whole? It's just to have.
No. It's to use the best example maybe is like this. We have the soul. The soul is a core energy. Let's call that the Etzem. Then there's the soul as it manifests in faculties. And that would not be a good example. No. The soul manifests in Keches Atzmim, which means the soul is Nesa, carries in it the power of wisdom, the power of chesed, of love, and so on. And then there's how they're expressed to somebody else. Well, let's say not even to someone else. How they become actually the power of wisdom. So there's the way there's the soul, how it carries these powers, and then there's the soul expressing these powers. Yeah. So the soul itself is beyond. The first level of Lavush is the soul's expression, just the mere fact that it has faculties on a core level. And then there's how those faculties start becoming revealed. Did you understand my example? It would be something like this. There's the sun. Then the sun has the power to give off light. But the light has not yet left the sun. In the sun there is the power to give light. You have to say that. As that light is in the sun, you don't yet see light. We don't see light. But it's no longer the sun itself. It's the sun's power to give off light. And then the sun begins to shine. That would be the three examples. The Etzem, beyond the whole thing. Its power of giving off light, but it's not yet. That's Etzem ha'er. So compared to the sun, it's a lavush, it's a garment. But compared to light itself, it's the deepest light you can get. And has whatever can be revealed will be revealed on that level. And then there's the light, Hadar, is the light the king is expressing to the world.
Why are you using three muscles for two things? It gets me confused. I'm not sure. You have Hoyd, and is that the Etzem, or is that... yesterday we expressed it as one is like Hayd is facing up and facing
Okay,
down.
fine. But then there's the core. Facing up. Where is it facing up? To the core, to the etzem. That's the third level. That's what I'm talking about. The etzem is now. I'm just speaking about the.
Higher than even Hayd.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Now came the second half of the chapter, where it got a little more dense. I'm going to read it again because I want it for myself and I think it's worthwhile. Middle of the page. So now that we've established that the etzem is beyond Hayd and Hadar, and Atik is Hayd, Arich is Hadar, and now the interesting thing is that the light that comes out of the sun is a garment to the light that's inside the sun, all revealing the core which is beyond both. So it's like a garment to a garment, so to speak, in that type of expression. And therefore the main primary place of Srida from the word Behiris, meaning brightness, where is it? It's higher than Atzilus. Where is real Behiris now? And also explains what means brightness. Why is there brightness? Because the core is beyond it. So where is the real state of brightness? The purest form of revelation is the Eir HaBligvul. Because the Gilim in Etzem Mamish. The Kol Ma Sheyachal is B'chinas Galas Mesma is above Gilim Mamish. Everything that could be revealed from the core comes in a revealed form here. Lower levels, you can't make such a statement. In the core, in the energy, as it is in its core, Etzem Eir has a big quality. It is the domain, the purest form of revealing. The first place that we call something called Gilui is Etzem Eir. So therefore, it's undiluted. It has no veils. It has nothing. Whatever will be revealed is going to be revealed from this level. To think of it this way: Atzmus willed revelation, and that will of revelation is called Etzem Eir. That's the place where everything. All revelation will come from there. Everything is going to come from there. Once you talk about Hadar, once you talk about Eir as it goes lower levels, it's still Eir. But now you can't say it's revealing everything. Remember we spoke about Esi Sachkika. What did we say? What was the chsar? What's the downside of engraved letters? He said it before in chapter 121. That downside is you have letters. As soon as you have letters, you're already saying it's not pure energy. You're saying Anoichi Hashem Elekecha. Fine, the letters of light. They're letters that are made of the same substance. But the bottom line is they're defined. So yes, compared to lower levels, to written letters where you have an additional ink, or compared to other levels, obviously it's a very powerful high level. But at the end of the day, it's still letters and there's still some type of shape and darkness there. By the way, even letters that are through and through are not as pure as the stone itself. Remember, the stone here is the pure white light. That's why you have to look at the stone here. The pure white light before it has any type of shape and form.
That's Etzem or?
This is Gilui HaEtzem. Gilui HaEtzem.
Sure.
No, the Etzem is beyond revelation. Think of it as white light. It's light. So the first step that came out of Atzmus is that he basically have a blank canvas. Without a blank canvas, you have nothing coming.
That's like Hod.
That's Hoyd. That's Atzmi. That's Atik. The highest levels, that's Eir HaBligvul. That's Eir HaBligvul. On this canvas now, you have now a revelation. Not letters yet. A revelation that is now can be capable for others to be able to relate to. That's Hadar. That's Arich. You're still talking Eir. But now it's an Eir that others can relate to. Think of it like this, maybe a canvas. Huh?
Different shade of white.
No, I would not say that at all. No. I would say another state of... one is just I'm trying to think of a good example. Stone.
What is it Lifnat Tzimtzum? Is this the Tehira Eloi?
Golav Galufi b'Tihirei Law. Remember, so Tihirei Law itself is arich. Yeah. I would say it's like this. I think the artist's will to want to create a piece of art. So it's the canvas is the way it's in God's envisioning a canvas, but he's like the melech for himself. And hadar is where it actually becomes a state of white light, where now you can put something there.
So in height it's really not even a canvas yet.
A physical canvas for sure not. You can't say it's a canvas. It's the concept of a canvas. But I would say it's not even a canvas. What it is, I'll tell you what it is. It's the Etzem has now expressed himself. It began a world of expression has begun. It's called the world of revelation. That's even before that. No, even Beis, he said, was not the... No, Beis is still lower level. We're talking now pure Eir Ein Sof now, as pure as it gets. Eir Atzmi. There's no other two levels that come after that.
Before even he willed it, no?
No, that's Kedem Alei Sarotzen. That's Chodar, I would say. Based on the previous discussions. Depends which level you're talking. There's a lot of levels. Generally speaking, what he says is, what we learned earlier is, there's this Eir, after this Eir, there's a level where he is Kedem Alei Sarotzen. That's Bereishim. Yeah, that's like Chodar here, Arich. Where he now has no Kalim yet. There's no Kalim.
That's when you be high.
That's... No, I'm telling you, he said clearly, Eir Atzmi is beyond Bereish. You can't even call it Bereish. It's a step down from Atzmus. What's that? Then comes the next level, will become a level where will become the place where the Ratzon will arise. I mean, you go back, I think it's Perich of Zion.
If there's no Ratzon before then, so why is this level happening? Why is there art? It's not a Ratzon to have Etzem or
You call it Ratzon, but it's beyond Ratzon. God doesn't need a Ratzon to have Ratzon. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's before he created the idea of Ratzon. It was some sort of will.
Well, no. It's all by will. It all comes from will. Whether there's a level called will, that's one question. And if there's a level that says what he wants. Remember, Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu is like that. As soon as there's a desire, you don't say Ratzon even. You say desire. Atzmus desires.
That's before Ratzon?
Yeah, there's nothing higher than that. Well, there's Atzmus is higher than that.
That's interchangeable with your head.
I don't know. That says somewhere. You're saying it's not mamish. It's not exactly. I wouldn't say interchangeable.
There's a desire and then there's a will.
No, you see, Nesava is the expression used because it's the closest example we have in our lives. It's a mashal. Obviously, God is no taiva. A mashal for us to understand something that's beyond any expression and reason is a taiva. If a taiva can stuck in kasha.
But
So-
expression, just no reason.
We're trying to understand Atzmus here. We're trying to understand that we don't understand it.
No,
We don't.
Ratzon-
You're not going to get it. That's I can
Ratzon
tell you.
happens after this. He had the,
Is this a mathematical question or a Havana question? You want to know mathematically where it fits? Ratzon works. Stick Ratzon wherever you like to stick it, wherever it works.
You're saying if Ratzon's afterwards. If you had the Ratzon,
Do you understand the concept of Bilta Mitzias Nimtza? Let's start with that. If you don't understand that, there's nowhere to go here. God is an existence not unlike any existence we can relate to. We only have a little taste of it in our own reality because God created us. But we cannot relate to Bilta Mitzias Nimtza. Can you understand the concept, for example, that something is there and not there at the same time?
no.
Okay, so there you go. So you're dealing with a reality that is not bound by any rules. Anything you use is already created. Use the word Ratzon.
You're using reason now, though.
That's us using words. So as soon as you're using words, you're using something that was created. That means there's something before those words.
Right.
What do you mean right? So then why are you trying to apply those words on things that before the words existed?
Because right now,
Don't tell me right and then tell me not right.
No, what are we doing now? We close the book. We're trying to apply words. We're applying words to try to
Well,
get
no.
closer to understand.
No, the answer is we're only talking after God gave us words. We're not talking before that. And before that you can't talk. Exactly what I'm saying. So you're trying to understand, how did God make Ratzon before there was the concept of Ratzon? I don't really know. He just can do it. He can do anything he wants to do. There's no way to explain it. You cannot apply the word Ratzon on God because Ratzon is a creation of God. That means that God preceded Ratzon. So you're saying to me, so how did God get from God to wanting something? You know, that's what I told you. We don't know. He has the ability to create the thing called Ratzon. He doesn't need Ratzon to create Ratzon. Who says he needs anything? All the rules that you apply don't fit there. That's what I'm saying. What we're talking about is after we're given the picture. But it's clear that we come to a point to understand that if the reality is completely not like us, there's not one thing you can find that's similar between us and God. Wisdom for sure doesn't exist there. Logic doesn't exist. Even the word desire doesn't. Even asava is just a word that we use because we have no other words to use. So the closest thing we can get to saying ashtak in kashas is saying asava. But if you think God's taiva is like our taiva, that's with chas v'sholom.
But we can still relate to that.
No, you can relate to something that's not like I said, shlila. But then he comes up and he said even shlila doesn't grasp it. Das war das Chavdira. Du verstehst das gut. What are we trying to do right now? Trying to relate to Atmos itself? Trust me, you're not going to relate to Atmos itself. If you don't go through these levels, you're not even going to come close. Through these levels, God said, I've empowered you. Go through my levels that I'm giving you, you'll understand me.
Did you really realize that you can't relate to Atmos?
Yeah, I realize.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's actually the greatest revelation. For me, the biggest Haskalah I ever came to was not relating to. To me, that was the deepest thing I've ever come to. Because you come to realize that who says understanding is a virtue? Since when is understanding such a virtue? That's this question. When you understand that, you'll be in good shape. I'm not saying we shouldn't understand, but you come to understand that understanding is just one tool in the chest. Then you realize what the chest is like. It's bigger than understanding. Right.
That's the greatest feeling.
But the only way to go there, you see, look, we are creatures of structure and of habit. And that for sure is not going to get you very far. That'll get you as far as, a habit can get you. If you want to go anywhere, you got to get rid of, at least shed some of that. Well, then you start learning Chassidus. What happens is Chassidus starts giving you a taste of Eir, of Keli. Exactly what we're doing here. The more frustrated you are, the more rest assured you're on the right path. If you're very calm with this, and it's all very nice, rest assured you're off track. I can tell you that right now. The more frustration, the better it is. Around Chassidus. I'm not talking about frustration in other areas of your life. So bottom line is you have to realize that this is shaking up a way we think and a way we do things. And the more uncomfortable you are, the better it is. That's why I think you're on the right track, because you're always uncomfortable with these ideas. That's how it is. Because what you're dealing is, you know what's happening here? The tension between your logical structures of yesterday are being confronted by a whole different structure that's beyond your logic, and they're crashing against each other. And there's no way, if you're comfortable, that means you're either not getting it, or you're distorting it, and so on.
Does it make sense?
I don't know what the word sense means. Tell me what sense means. It makes sense? Well, listen, it makes more sense to be going and making money, some people will say, instead of sitting here 2 hours in the morning and learning Chassidus. I mean, what do you mean makes sense? Depends whose sense. The Elam has a sense. People are preparing for Nittel now. It's out of Nittel. Preparing how, preparing for Nittel, like what he said. I still didn't finish doing nothing. Like the guy said. The Maisa told his wife. She said, you said yesterday you're not doing anything. He says, I didn't finish. Yes, it makes total sense. It's unbelievably geschmack and unbelievably enlightening. I'm just saying that as you climb it, what you're really doing is you need to challenge your preconceptions. That's why, for example, even imagining something higher than time and space. Can you tell me how you do that? We learned clearly. He says it's impossible for a creature of time and space to imagine something that's beyond time and space. Yeah. So how do we imagine something beyond time and space? The fact is we still could. We could because we have a neshama and we were given tools. If we were just a stone, we probably couldn't. But because we have a mind, a chachma, that can go and has powers that come from things that are higher than time and space, so we have like an alien from higher than time and space that can inform us a little about it. But naturally, a creature of time and space shouldn't be able to go there. And it's a big, big challenge. Even with what I just said, it's not so easy. Because we always fit it into something of some example. That's why Chassidus, the beauty of Mashalim and Chassidus, when the Alter Rebbe started giving examples, the Rebbe explains, I think in Kuntus Yon Shoterach says, an example is not just an example to help us understand it. Example is telling us, here's a gashmistic thing that was created in order to reveal to you a lakus that you can't relate to directly. A mashal is actually the goof of the neshama of the idea that it's a mashal to. That's an unbelievable concept. So when we look at, like example, letters, engraved letters, or letters on parchment, it was created. Why do you have such an example? To give you a taste of divine. But you couldn't taste it on your own, so we need something. Here's an example. Why did they able to make life so complicated? Why do we have to have an unconscious and a conscious, and we have to have a mind, and the mind has to work, and then it comes into letters? As a writer, I can tell you, it's hard to write, it's hard to communicate, it's hard to express it, and so on and so forth. Why? Because he's giving us, we are walking examples of how the sublime divine becomes a structured existence. When you conceive of an idea, and then you flesh it out, and you build a company, business based on it, you have an example of Bria. Not exactly, but what you've taken is a sublime state, and it's come to a tangible state. From Etzem has come through Eir, through Keli. So the point I'm making here is that, so what do we have is like this. Let's go back to this. So where's the pure, so Etzem itself is beyond revelation. But remember, because Eir is Me'en HaMoyer and is bottled to the Moyer, it can reveal to us what the Moyer is like. Even though it's not the same substance. That's the paradox. Sunlight is not like the sun. You can study sunlight all day. You can bottle it and study it under a microscope and will not tell you what the sun is like. It will tell you that the sun gives off this light and the sun has light in it. But all the elements of the sun, hydrogen and oxygen and all the forces, a sun is a whole ball, it's a whole entity of its own, it's a goof. Right? Just like this light bulb gives off light right now, what do we know about the light bulb from the light? All you know is that the light bulb can emanate light. Then take the light bulb, put it right here and crack it. You'll find all kinds of filaments and stuff in it. You have no idea that the light never would reveal what the light bulb is like. Light bulb is a whole entity. It's an entity that emits light, which tells you that one aspect, it tells you it gives off light. Eir Ein Sof, in its fundamental core, what it does is it tells you that the source can reveal. That's good. But more than that, it can tell you everything the source can reveal, because it's a revelation force. Later we're going to learn that because there's also a yesh, and God did other things that He created, not just Eir, so Eir can reveal to us also the power of Atzmus to create a yesh. So it teaches us about Mitzusim Atzmusei. In other words, the real core essence of the divine that's beyond revelation is actually revealed, you know where? When God is concealed. Because light can't conceal. So the fact that light can be concealed has to tell you that Atzmus is not bound by light. I'm just giving you an example how light itself reveals things that light itself doesn't have. Right? Because suddenly there's concealment. How could there be concealment? Light is a revealer. Then you see a yesh. Light is not a yesh. Light is completely bottled to the source. So where did the yesh come from? So in other words, suddenly light is revealing to you, like I said yesterday, imagine sunlight shines and after 5 minutes a human being is born out of the sunlight. You'd say, 1 second, what kind of sun is this? It's not just a sun that gives off light. This sun has something in it that's far beyond light. That's exactly what happens in our reality. Revelation we know we have. We know that God can reveal, because we see revelation. But suddenly you see a yesh. Like he says in the Gesek, a yesh, that you feel that we don't have a source. You say, 1 second, light can't reveal something that has no source. Light itself is constantly revealing to me there's a source. That's what Alter Rebbe's Chiddush, one of the last things that he said before he passed away, he wrote it before he passed away. So you have to say that the yesh is telling you that there's an Atzmus that himself has no source. So in other words, because there are other things that God planted into existence, not just light, we can learn about Atzmus much more than light itself would reveal to us. But that's for a discussion, not for now. That's not this Maimah here. That's discussed. I'm just saying it for the record. So now let's go back here. But what is Behirus? Now, the purest form of clarity is not clarity relative to the concealment of this world. It's the actual existence of clarity. God willed, or God is revealing Himself. The Etzem has decided to reveal. I don't want to use the word Ratzon, I don't want to use the word Nesav, I don't want to say anything. I will just say the Etzem has expressed himself. That word called expression is called Gilui, that's called Eir. In its purest form, it's Eir Atzmi, Eir Abligvul, before anything. In its next state, it becomes a white light, which will ultimately be a place where letters will begin to be able to be formed. So there's...
That's Kevin.
Huh? Well, let's put it this way. In the levels, if I recall correctly, and I have to go back to Perek of Zayin, if I recall correctly, there's Atzmus, there's definitely Eir HaKol, I'm not going to Eir HaKol, that's a whole different thing. Eir Atzmi is Kedem Alei Saratzen. That's even Kedem Alei Saratzen, no. Eir Atzmi is for sure beyond it all. I think there's no spheres even there.
So there's a field of energy.
That's the field of energy. That's the field of energy. 1 second. But then there's a field of energy with the spheres and kets.
That's later.
What do you mean later? That's what I'm
There's a
talking
field of energy.
Right.
Then emerges from that, spheres and cats.
That's what I'm saying. Second is spheres and kets, which means there's already now revelation of spheres and kets. Spheres and kets is Kedem Alei Saratzen. Before, there's no desire. Then comes Shir Atzmi B'Keich. In the infinite spheres, he chooses 10 spheres. That's already letters, and Eir that goes in the letters. That's already the engraved letters.
That's the 10 spheres.
Hidden spheres, the 10 hidden spheres, and then comes Malchus of Ein Sof and the Tzimtzum and so on. That's essentially it. So yeah, there's Atzmi. Huh?
I just wondered if you can do it also in the Kabbalah letters. Well,
Tihiri law is explained to 2 ways. Tihiri law sometimes is just the spheres enket that like is like the field of energy I just said. Eir Atzmi is not even Tihiri law. You can't call that anything. It's basically Gili. That's the musig of Gili. The idea of Gili. That Mitzvah is built to Mitzvah Nimtza. There's no concept of conceal and reveal. Gili means basically the jump from Mitzvah is built to Mitzvah Nimtza to Mitzvah Nimtza. That is Etzem Eir. Not even Shemai. No, I would say that's beyond anything. Then comes, I would say Tihiri law. Depends how you touch Tihiri law. There's 2 ways it's interpreted. But regardless. Why? Because he's referring to it, like he's saying here. Like I'm going 1 second. Let's read it inside. Can I just see something in Perek Chav Zayin? Let me just not jump. I think it was Chav Zayin. Am I correct? Versuchst in Tilim.
I found that pasuk.
Oh, Mashiach.
Says you have placed majesty and splendor upon him.
Okay, we think we said placed or. Willst verstehen is look at a child.
He wants to go up. He's all I'll get up the stairs.
Yeah, this is a Perek Tez Zayin and Perek Chav Zayin.
That's why it's also not
This is the same beginning of this. So that's a little bit in a portion.
Is it Elsa?
and Gimel.
Okay, I'll look at it more a little later. Perek Tez Zayin also. So he says in Perek Tez Zayin. Okay. Look, it's relevant to Chav Zayin because remember we talked about konaf, min konaf, like tzitzis. Tzitzis are made of the same material as the corn as the garment, but it has to be separate from. So it's min konaf, not the konaf atzmei. Konaf, not min konaf. I'm sorry, min konaf, not konaf. So he said that's Eir HaGvul, because it's still Eir. Whereas, for example, Sharshei HaKelim, the Kelim themselves, had B'chinas Eisius Levad. Yeah, it's very relevant, by the way, Perek Chav Zayin, to what we're learning now. Good. Okay, let's continue here. So let me just read this inside. Let me continue reading it. So what do we have? Because the Behirish, here we go. Where are we? Where are we going? The Kol Mashiach. Oh, where are we? We can sorry. The Kol. I keep skipping something. Okay, so this is why the Kol Mashiach is Galzaz above Gili Mamish. For who in Eir Boyer the Atik. This is the level of Eir Boyer the Atik of Atik, as we said, the higher level. Shemeir and Mizgali de Bechinas Arechampin. That irradiates and is revealed through Arechampin. So that's Hoyd and Hodar. So essentially. Yeah. Well, if Fize Yeshlema, now comes the key thing. Yeah, Fize Yeshlema, Pirush Dalad B'Shem Sfira. According to this, we can explain the fourth meaning in the word Sfira, Lashon Sefer. Book. Zeh Sefer Teldus, Sefer Habris. This is, by the way, taken straight from the Tzemach Tzedek, like I said before. In that same Maimah where he brings all the interpretations. Dihini b'Mishnah Beis, Perek Beis the Megillah Isa. The Gemara Megillah, Mishnah Megillah says, Acha tehek suva ashuris ala sefer. He's talking about how to write a sefer Torah. The point that it has to be written like a letter ashuris. Ashuris means the way letters are written in a sefer Torah, not as ksav ivris, which is the way we write it. Let's say in ksav Yavanis, yeah. Mavur the Pirush Sefer Hainu Klaf. So Sefer, when it says the Gemara Ashuris Allah Sefer, it doesn't mean a book. It means Sefer means on a parchment, on a Sefer. Ayin, the Ayin in this is Dini Omer Azal Kol Eshein Gvil Mukav Lo Medal Rechusah Psula. Every letter that is not surrounded, which is a psak he brought before. He brought this before in the beginning of chapter 121. So there he brought it actually about written letters. Now you're going to see he's using an example that's even beyond engraved letters. So don't confuse the two. There was written on ink on parchment is different than engraved letters. Now he's using the example for a letter for the level. We're talking about a level that's beyond letters. So let's see what he's talking about here. So any letter that's written and is not surrounded by the gvil, by the section of the parchment, from all four sides, is invalid. Has sha'ikira klaf. What do we learn from this? That the main thing here is the parchment. It's not the letters, but the parchment. He's going to explain that the letters come from the parchment, not the parchment is just a incidental backdrop for the letters.
There's another way of thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking out of the box.
Right, exactly.
Black is the letter.
Yeah. So usually the din you'd learn, why is that? Because you want to have clear words. To see the letters clearly, if they're on top of each other, touch each other, you're not going to see them clearly. But if you really read it, what it's really saying is that you need to have klaf everywhere, basically. That these letters have to be seen all the time, that they are letters in a parchment. You see? So it's more than just a technical matter. Because the technical matter says, and what happens if I'm a good sefer and I can write two letters and they are so as clear as someone else and they do touch? So it's more than just a technical. It's a din in the sefer Torah. So he's going to explain now what that means. And this is taken, as I said, this is taken from the Mamorim Simani Kechesim. What are you looking at?
The whole thing, Beis Shumas and the Malka.
What chapter? What page? So what does he say there?
He talks about the whole thing here.
Yeah, but there's a few places where it's discussed, not the only place. This one? Okay.
Beis Shumas will go higher, like about 10 lines from the top.
Oh, Bichas Sheitzer, that whole piece. Yeah. Of course I remember that. Yeah. So for the mile Megedder Rotzen came Rotzen. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to look it up. The levels will be clear. This is pretty consistent usually, these things. Okay. So now we're going like this. So now we have Klaf. Now here we got yesterday some things here I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it. It's more detailed here than anywhere. Because the ink, all it does is darken the klaf. But the main letter is from the parchment. The only thing is that through the ink, the letters are revealed from the parchment. Yeah, it's pretty strong. But what I saw in the Mitla Rebbe, or I forgot where I saw it, actually Tzemach Tzedek, he says something like this. He explains it a little differently uses different words, which I think makes it a little easier to understand, because I wasn't sure what this meant. I mean, we put ink, you put the ink on the parchment. So it's true, if you had no parchment, the ink would go nowhere. What would you do with ink? You have to have somewhere to place it. But you'd say it's a combination. The canvas or the parchment is the canvas, and the ink is what makes the letter. He says here the ink is just bringing out the letter from the klaf.
Example of what Kalim is. That's the whole.
I know in the Nimshul I understand. I'm looking at the Marshal.
35 millimeter.
In the Marshal, when you say shame.
One second. But I want to.
The negative is 35 millimeter cameras.
So we got that. Okay.
When you say shame Kedusha, just say the Torah, it automatically sets it up like that.
What?
When you say, what is this? Right, shame Kedusha.
Yeah. But what does that do? That's still not.
Makes it. Puts the letters in.
Hold on. But what he says that Tzemach Tzedek, right? Just want to say one thing. He says a word there. What does he say? He says, one second. When you, for example, put ink to parchment, the question is the letter the dark space, or is the letter the space around, the white space that surrounds the dark? In other words, when you're reading an aleph, is it the line and the two things, or is it the shape around it? You just made a silhouette, in other words.
We're always taught to think that the letter is the letter, but now he's saying something.
So it's like a silhouette almost.
Basically both. It's both.
You need
Because if you did the exact opposite and you covered everything else with black ink, you'll still be able to define the letters.
You started with a black.
No, but I would say there's an example, a great example. If you take the 35 millimeter camera,
Yeah, go ahead.
What are the negatives.
Right.
And if you look at it in the light, the whole picture is only because of the shaded parts. Only because of the shade, so you can see the picture. That's like the Kalim, that's the mashal of the Kalim, that's basically what he's saying. And it's not the shade that's anything, it's just it's revealing the part the picture's being revealed because of the shade.
It's an excellent example. It's similar to when we learned earlier. Remember when we learned that only white brings out the colors of everything else. So in other words, when you put a projector with white light, and then you put a okay. When you, for example, you take cutout letters, and then you shine a projector through them, and you see on the wall letters of light, Aleph, Beis, Gimel. So that's the idea here.
The letters are darkened, actually.
Okay, good. But I'm using the same idea. But yeah. But the point is that the truth is, as I mentioned from graphic design, designers will tell you the key thing is the white space, not the black space on a page, because it's not the letter itself; it's the balance. And there's far more white space on a page than black. So what the letters are really doing, there's actually a chkirich in Kabbalah, when you say space, is it the space of the thing or is the thing around it?
It's very easy to imagine it because sometimes they have a dark background and the letters are white.
Yeah. Well, he's going to say it's when Eish Cher al Eish Levena.
So from that you can really see that it's the background that's doing it, not sometimes
Very few electrons.
Yeah, the opposite way. The black is the background. Yeah.
So you can see from there that the actual, because it's a hollow space, because you can imagine it. It's
Yeah. Okay.
Very little matter in the
Here you can't imagine it's like a hollow space. The letters like a hollow space.
So here goes. And the Ayin is that even though the image or the shape of the letter is only from the ink, without the klaf, without the parchment that carries it and bears it, there would nothing come from the ink at all. There would be no shape or picture at all, no image at all. That's why every letter that is not mukav gvil,
because it's embedded in the cloth.
so it's not just for clarity of the letters, but it's not mukav, it's not surrounded by the cloth. Apostle is invalid. So if that's the case, the ink just darkens the garment, the parchment. In order for that the parchment should reveal the letter. And the primary source of the letter is from the parchment.
The Jacobson is built into the cloth itself.
I think a good example would also be how ideas are formulated. Letters. You want to express an idea, I'm saying now words are coming out of my mouth. The words are like the ink, the letters that my mouth is shaping. He mitzvahs hapeh, Aleph, Beis, Gimel. It's meaningless without the cloth, which is the idea upon which these letters are being engraved. So my letters are just giving shape, but the idea is what's the flow. The flow is the idea. In other words, machshava, the thought. And the letters are the ink that are so-called channeling the thought. That's what he's really saying. In Gashmis, it's a little harder to envision, but it's absolutely correct. Okay.
It's easier to imagine if you flip the page around.
The nimshal is easier than a marshal.
It is. I know, I said that yesterday. Okay, Vim Kain Tzarech Leimer.
No, the background is dark, but the letters are white. You see clearly that the letters are made because of the background.
Go 1 second. Then finally has this. So we have to say that there's letters in the klaf, that there's letters in the parchment. Also, what the ink, there's letters in the klaf, in the parchment. Also, what the ink does not darken. And it's revealed only on its own. This line we didn't really understand. What does this mean?
It's there potentially. I mean, everything.
In the nimshal, I understand. In the mashal. The nimshal, fine. In the nimshal, it's very clear. You know why? Because I'll tell you why the complicated the mashal is. The mashal is fine if you know the nimshal. What's the nimshal? The nimshal is God didn't
Why do you need the mashal?
One second. Hold on a second. You need the mashal because we need to be mevar the world. We need to find the world. But here's what I want to say. No. Remember before I said that till this mimer, he was talking primarily from the bottom up. So bottom up, we live in a concealed world. We need revelation, so containers reveal more. But once you get into the world of revelation, what's the revelation there? The answer is because the etzim is higher. Remember, letters is a superimposed reality. What comes first is white light. So everything, all the letters are going to. That's why the nimshal makes total sense. Because even Eid HaGvul comes from Eid HaBli. Exactly. So the first thing is white. See, in the case with white light and letters, the white. We say you need to have white light, but then you need to have a film to put in front of the white light. But in the nimshal, the moral, even the film is created from the white light. It's also coming from the same divine power. So I guess in halacha, the actual reason halachically, and in fact, in here, this case, the nimshal actually teaches us the mashal. In halacha, the reason that you need to have every letter separate is because the first thing you need is the white light. First thing is you need the white parchment. Everything is there. Now, we have to bring out the letter. And if you made the letters, if it wasn't surrounded by cloth, it would be like almost denying God. Denying the source where the letters are coming from. That's the point.
So in other words,
by the way, he didn't say this is a mashal. He didn't say al derech mashal. He just said halacha. He said halacha, exactly. If this was, it fits very well once you know the idea. Yeah, I understand, but I'm saying. So the halacha, so that's the reason that the letter, in other words, the letter has to always know that it's a letter part of a parchment of God, basically. It would be like, imagine, here, I'm using words, and my words suddenly go off and hijack the message. Instead of expressing the message, the idea that it was meant to be, the letters become a force of their own. All you are is part of a cloth. You're not your own entities. So next time you open your mouth and speak, remember, ask yourself the question, are you part of a cloth? Are you part of a parchment? Or you're a kaplish macher?
That's our consciousness about that?
No, it's atzmei from the cloth.
What is it in Moshe?
Let me see. Shadmuna had built a cloth. You can make it a from a cloth. You know what it means? You know what it means? I'll tell you what it means. That even though you're seeing 10 spheres on the cloth, no, there's many more spheres. There's infinite spheres there.
It's me. There's an infinite.
You. What do you mean you? Who are you? Who are you?
It's all consciousness.
Means not through you, not through your ink. It's not through your ink. Right.
But only
and the moral of this Subma Klaf Halovan Zabchin Sedein Sof HaPoshut. Here we go. And the nimshal of this is Shaklaf Halovan Zabchin Sedein Sof HaPoshut B'Tachas HaPshitas. The white parchment is Edein Sof, the ultimate, the pure, as plain and shapeless as it gets. Not even, it's beyond anything. What he said before, Atik, in other words, Hoid. Remember now we're talking not like he spoke before. Before, when he's talking klaf, he was talking about letters that are added on, as opposed to engraved. So here think of klaf as being like engraved. That's all it's. I mean, here it's just, he's using the same words, but here he's talking about it in the context. I think of it as engraved, not as added on. Okay. Hold on. The AC is that's the klaf. So the klaf, the parchment is Eidin Sof Pashut. Shapeless energy, the field of energy, a shapeless field of energy. Va'asius, and the letters Hena Esses Spheres, Shem B'chinas Eidus V'Kelim, and the letters are the 10 spheres. That's Eidus in Kelim, energies in containers. Va'Megalim Esa Eir Hena Kelim.
Why would it be Eidus? Why would it be Eidus and Kelim? The letters would be only Kelim.
No, because a letter has an idea in it. A letter has an idea in it. No, because in general, ACs, we're talking about ACs that carry ideas in it. So now, V'Magalim Esaid Heina Kelim. And what reveals the energy? That's the containers. So the container is like the ink that reveals it. But where is it rooted? It's rooted in the cloth. It's rooted in the cloth. It's rooted in the parchment, in the shapeless light, not in the ink. Not in the letter. So that's it. That's why he uses the example. Eidus V'Kelim. What's the example? The example he's trying to say is that when you're writing a letter, let's say you write an aleph, so you have an eir, which is the energy that's going into the aleph. And then you have the actual ink, that's the container. So you could say, before this explanation, that this is its own entity. No. It's all in the cloth. It's all being made. It's all the Keli really is doing is drawing out a letter from the infinite shapeless light.
Down to a seer. That's what
And this is her example. the white and plain parchment. Yeah, Shanesa v'sevel ha'esius, that carries and
Tolerance.
no, we said sevel means bears the letters. Now he says al derech mashal. That's a klavla Shanesa v'sevel ha'esius. Yeah, think of it like this. You want to hear? Here's a good visualization, if you like. I said yesterday with the projector. Yeah. Imagine that someone comes to you with a film with letters, but you have no projector. So what are you going to have? You can't see it. You can't see anything. Imagine God wants a world of structure, but He never created Gili. So we'd have an existence, we'd have stones, and we'd have minerals and vegetables and animals and man. But it would be it's like just pieces out there in the dark, like a film that has no projector. Like sitting in the dark, basically. So you never really know the distinction between one thing and the next. The klaf is light.
Metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
No distinction between one and another.
Yeah, because it would all be in the dark. It would all be dark.
Dark means godliness.
No, dark, physically dark. Like I said, someone gives you a film and you have no projector. You can't know what's on the film. So basically the creation of klaf, the levush, that God puts on, Oiter Kesalma, puts on a garment of light. So He's creating a canvas, which is really a projector of white light. And now, any letters, any details that He wants will emerge from it.
But they all come from
Yeah.
the light.
Yeah. Well, even the ink comes from the light, in truth. But here, the Sheresh HaKelim obviously are a different route. So bottom line is, yeah.
Okay.
Remember we spoke about without white, only white color, only clear white is a backdrop that brings out everything Kamei Shehu. Remember we said it's Kamei Shehu? Both ways. From the source, it tells you exactly the way it is because it's not coloring it. Doctor, remember there's a video on, so every sound you make is recorded forever. So that's one thing, and it also brings out the true color of anything you put on white. So remember we spoke that if you took away Gavin Lavan, if you only had red, blue, green, and so on, God would create a colored world, but you wouldn't be able to see things for what they really are, because there'd be no backdrop of pure white light. So the Ed HaBligvul is like a backdrop that gives you like a standard almost. First of all, it reveals the source the way it is without any colors. It's pure brightness. Doesn't have any, even God's interest that He wants to have, let's say, Atzilus, is already a color. It's called Atzilus, it's not Bria. Here you have completely that doesn't have any spheres in it. It's pure, and that in turn allows it to then also be a source that no matter what you do, it brings out the true color of our individuality. Because it's not a colored backdrop. So remember he said Yesod Naveda, if you remember the Yesod, for the whole Ayin of Aveda of the Binyan HaKdusha, remember? That was the words he used. Is what? Is that you do something for no interest at all. Because if as soon as you have any color, it's really not pure. So you need to have a backdrop, a background that is a pure white parchment. That's really the essence of it. In the Maimorim Simani Kechesim, he says that the Ritzuas, interestingly, are black. But they're made of the same material as the parchment. And it's higher than the letters, than the Pashas. So the Ritzuas have something that make them higher. And he says, that's why the Zohar says that the Ritzuas are like engraven in your heart. Simani Kechesim, what's the Lashon? Simani Kechesim Lipcha? Libech. But then there's the second half. Simani Kechesim Libech, and there's something, I don't remember exactly the expression. But bottom line is, Simani Kechesim. Why? Because it's like an engraved element. So interestingly, what you have here is that the Ritzuas are made of the same cloth, so they're made of Eid HaBligvul, It's similar to what we learned about tzitzis, kanaf and mim kanaf. That the Eir HaGvul is mim kanaf, but not kanaf. It's from the same material, but it's a separate entity, gvul. So the same thing here, in a way, the tzuos of tefillin are like that. So the Eir HaGvul is really a piece of it. Remember, he kept on saying how important it is, that Shir Atzmei. Where does the artist envision this particular structure of spheres in the infinite possibilities? Remember, he said, Shir Atzmei be'Eir HaGvul as Eir HaGvul. That means Sovev is Kail Mamala. Yeah. No, we learned this right. I just want to. I'm spelling out. Let me just see something. A Pedic. What's Pedic? What we look for? Chav Zayin. I want to see something. Chav Zayin. Where's Pedic Chav Zayin? It's an interesting thing there. 1 second. That's the chapter Min Kanaf. But 1 second. But he says like this. Okay, good. So now he goes on and says, "Ace is saying, as Rishon says, we kill him hamagalim as Eren kol Shem v'zeu kamal derech moshal klaf halov and shenesu v'sevel aces." And that's, for example, like the white parchment that carries and bears the letters. That's like the Eir Ein Sof carries and bears the letters that are revealed through the containers. Same thing, the gili of the revelation of the energy is from Eir Ein Sof Baruch Hu. That's the klaf. But then he goes, however, we can, the only thing is you can qualify by saying this is Eir Pnimi. These letters, even though what we just say, that they're rooted in the Eir HaBligvul, but this is really how Eir Ein Sof Shir Atzmei, this is B'chinas Eir Pnimi. As if you remember that he said that according to this Hemshech, he's talking that Eir also have spheres in them, also have. The B'chinas Zu Eina B'chinas Gili Min Ha'etzem Mamish. And that's not really Gili Min Ha'etzem, because Eir HaPnimi, at the end of the day, has a function. Because the inyan of the defined letters, or the energy, let's put it this way, now the energy, okay, is already is Eris in 10 hidden spheres. And for sure, that through the containers, the latest mizgal, the way it is in its pure form. What I'm saying, what did I read here? Yeah, right. So he's saying like this. He's qualifying it now. He's qualifying by saying, because if this is the case, he was just speaking that the white parchment is Eir HaBligvul, that's pure brightness, and then that's the parchment. The letters, what does he say, the spheres are Eres Ukelim, so even though the container reveals, but it's rooted in what? In the pure light. But what we're talking here are letters. So he's saying these letters really is revealing the Pnimi. It's really internal light. It's not the pure brightness. It's one level lower. But Kolskin, and for sure that through the containers, the energy is not revealed the way it is in its purest form. Omnam Kamay Kain. Now he goes on. Nevertheless, the same thing is basically it's the level of arich. That's what I would say. And there's also the Eretz of Apasha, the shapeless light that's without containers. The B'chinas Sefer. This is the level of Sefer. The book that he said, the B'chinas Sfiris B'chinas Mamish B'chinas Gili Min Ha'etzem Mamish, where you have the complete brightness. There's Mamish Gili Min Ha'etzem. No, Arich is the level before. The Yesh Lemer. What he's qualifying and saying is the following. The
Sefer is a separate thing. It's another level. And then
Wait, 1 second. Remember, what do we establish? That there's Hoid v'Hadar, right? Hoid is pure field of energy. Pure white light. Complete behirus, complete brightness, correct? You can't even access it through shlila, through negating. That's atik. Then comes the next level. Hadar is how it becomes defined, expressed, and revealed to the nation. Hadras melech. Hidur. Got that? That's no, that's not Isis yet. No, that's still air. That's higher than Kalim for sure. He said that clearly. That was the whole question. Because he's not talking pure air. We're talking pure air. There's two levels in air. Air atzmi, and the air that's harder from the air atzmi. That's harder. That's what he said so far. 1 second. He said, according to this now, what did he say? The real in your spheres is air habligvul. Okay? Atik. That is revealed through Arich. So right now we're talking Eir. The Haid is being revealed through Hadar. There's no Asius said at all. No, because he's ready to gauge. He said Asius Hakiki even was already a lower level. Then he went over to Eir Habligvul is the real. Gilu is Eir Habligvul. But now starts another piece. It says Apizah Yeshlemer. He says that there's a fourth interpretation, Sefer. And to explain Sefer, he goes into this whole thing with the Klaf. But here's the question. You go into Klaf and Asis, we just went away from Asis. In chapter Kuf Chof Aleph, on page Reish Lamed Hey, right in the middle, he spoke, remember, Simon Tzad the Kalim, the real place of Sfiras Abiris is Madregas that's higher than Atzilus. Simon Tzad Kalim, because the real Kalim are engraved letters. And he said, but that is also ultimately Pnimi. Remember, he said, because Mamish Eresev Mamish, I know Eresev Kinsein Subkins Blugin Shachin Yaklelim Klal. And the Behir is there is just Eir. That's Atik. Okay. So now he's suddenly going back to the world of letters. That's why he has to make this qualification. So here's how it works. That's why I explained yesterday a little. I'll just say it maybe different words. So we have established that real pure light is beyond containers and letters. It's an Eir Habligvul that's shapeless, has no spheres, or it doesn't say infinite, just plain shapeless. In that there are two levels. There's the core energy, the core field of energy, and the way it's revealed to the nation and to the others, so to speak. The way it's expressed and revealed in details. But not details as in spheres, or maybe in Eir, but we're talking everything is Eir, okay? We're talking about Pshittis, we're talking about Shtiplis. Now he's going back and say, okay, so now we understand that the third interpretation of Sapir, that makes total sense. The third interpretation of clarity, of brightness, is in Eir Habligvul. Now he says, according to this, we could say there's a fourth meaning in Sefer, it's called Sefer. Sefer is a book. What does he interpret? Sefer is a klaf. The klaf, he's saying, is this Eir Habligvul. So the klaf right now, pure parchment, is clearly the ultimate clarity, Eir Habligvul. Right? Then something happens in this klaf. Letters are made. Where are these letters coming from? So these letters are coming from the klaf, from the white bligvul, except there's another level that's being thrown in now. What's shaping them into letters? That's why he's saying Yeshlemer, that there's another level. So there's the white klaf as it is before, which just contains all possibilities. Then there's the white klaf that is shaping 10 spheres. So the actual shaping is being done by the containers, but it's coming from the white bligvul. That's like the Eir HaGvul is coming from the Eir HaBligvul. And as the Kalim of the 10 hidden spheres, that is the ink that's revealing it. But then you go back to the parchment itself. The real Sefer is the parchment that's not the root of the 10 spheres. It's the parchment like a step before that. You follow what I'm saying? I'm trying to find it.
Very clear.
Yeah.
Parchment before.
Clearly, he's saying he said, like says, look, Omnam Kamakeyesh Gelim Kinsian Savapasha Shalaya De Kalim.
Torah.
That's Sefer. So, you know what Sefer is? Sefer is a clear parchment. I said before, a field of energy where everything is going to happen there. But both the Eir HaBligvul, which is pure as brightness, and then the next step will be actual writing. That's why he said that the klaf has many letters that you can't even see that are not coming. They come as Galam Atzma. So in other words, this white parchment has in it infinite possibilities. And then it will have another level, which is the possibility of the 10 spheres, which is also rooted from the klaf.
Does it Yechelis?
I don't want to use Yechelis. He doesn't say Yechelis. Why is he sticking Yechelis there? Yechelis is an atzmus, not an air. No, this is already out of Yechelis. This is it's not actual, but it's not. We're talking here levels that.
The level already where it can become.
Anyway, and then comes and the kalim are the ink. Okay, so we really have is like that. The parchment, basically, what's the little twist here is that the parchment has like two levels to it. That's what he says here. And this is what Azal say, that the Torah is white fire on top of black fire on top of white fire. So black fire on top of white fire, so the white fire is the bleakable. He said, the Kolosin Eish B'chinas Eir, Commissioners Baralel Perek Tzadik Aleph. Eish is air, light energy. Ve'eish Cheda, black or dark fire, Heines Spheres Datzilis. That's the 10 spheres of Atzilus, Shagilu Al Yedei HaKelim, where the revelation is through containers. That's why it's Shachar. What's Cheda? It's colored. It's not pure and shapeless. Gam Yeshleim, you could also say She'er Nikra Gam Ken Eish Cheda M'pnei Sheba Yedei Tzimtzum. So one is because it's coming shaped, and also you could say it's Cheda, it's dark because it came through a Tzimtzum, which is a concealer, which is it darkened the light. It's like an eclipse. Shu Gam Ken Bedugmas Kli. A Tzimtzum is also like an example of a container because it conceals limits. Like we learned before, chapter 94. And this is the meaning of Sfira Melashon Sipur V'Agoda, that Sfira is from the story, narrative. So Sipur V'Agoda, one second. Mispur is the Kalim. The Gili through the Kalim, Eish Cheda, the dark flame, the dark fire, that's the story. What about Sapir? Eish Leven, the white light, that's the Eir V'Gil Datm Sen Sefer Pasha B'Tachas V'In Sfira Melashon Sapir V'Sefer. The white light is the Eir HaBlikvul. He said it already also on top. Here it is both. He's mixing the fourth interpretation. He's connecting to the third interpretation. I was wondering whether the two. I was thinking that maybe Sapir is really the Eir HaBlikvul and Sefer is already the Eir HaGvul in the Eir HaBlikvul, but it doesn't look like it. So the white light is the Eir HaGilid from the Atzmus HaPoshet that's completely shapeless, and that's Sfira from Sapir v'Sefer. Sapir v'Sefer. Hold on. And then in that he made the Eish Cheda, and that he shaped it, and then he shaped it with actual Eish Cheda, dark light. That's the Eir. What he's not saying here is the Eir HaBlikvul that he mentioned before. He's not mentioning here the Sheda She'er HaGvul. You have to say that's Sfiras. That sounds like Sfiras of Atzilus. Or B'derech Prat B'Teira Yeshleim, and more specifically in Teira you can say Shedab B'chinas Chitzenis or Pnim Yesha B'Teira. This is the outer dimension of Teira. That would be the dark flame, dark fire. Or Pnim Yesha B'Teira, the inner dimension of Teira. B'chinas Razon the Razon, or the secrets of the secrets that we learned earlier is beyond the unconscious. Unconscious is Atik. We could also say this is the positive mitzvahs and the negative mitzvahs. Eish Cheda on top of Eish Levena. See, the interesting thing, I thought he was going to say Eish Cheda, Eish Levena. You'd think he says that the Esesphiris Hagnuzis would be the dark flame on top of the white flame of the Eir HaBlikvul. And he's saying no, it's the 10 spheres of Atzilus. But you have to say, the dark light here, the dark fire, is Esesphiris. In their full form, with their dark, is in Kalim of Atzilus. But their root is the 10 hidden spheres, which was already also superimposed over the white light, which is complete shapeless and completely no.
That's the whole thing. It's the unity. He used the word safe.
Okay, even though I learned this chapter already, I just thought we should go over it again. It's very interesting. So this connects to chapter 16 and chapter 27. And what chapter did you suggest? Did you say? Badesha Manissa, I have to look that up. What?
Chapter chapter 69.
And chapter 69. Okay, so 16, 27, and 69. I'm going to look it up. Okay, we'll stop here. So we did a summary of chapter 123, Hemshechayim Beis, and we finished from, we went through pages 238 till 240.
You want to do the kids around the mic? Or you did it yesterday?
I did it yesterday. I can do it again. Why not? I'll do it again. The kitzur. And it's like the two levels in Kesser Malchus. It's the same thing as in. So it's like the two levels in the Kesser of the crown of the king. Same thing is the Kesser. Hoid b'chinas atik. Hoid is the level of atik. Hodar b'chinas arich. Shayod meir ha'oris atik. Through arich, it radiates in the reflection of atik. V'shayab zeh yidiyah hasafla. And you can have the knowledge of the grandeur of it. Mashenkin ba'atik, and atik is beyond it all. Mashiach yigal etzem b'chinas ha'ed. Mashiach will reveal the core level of hoid. Ub'chinas hoid ugam ken levush l'gab atzmus. Hoid is also a level of garment compared to atzmus. Omnam zeu etzem ha'er. But this is the core field of energy. For hodad hurak is galus ha'ed. And hodad is just the revelation of that energy. Ach megala kol ma shemeir mislapish beh. But it reveals everything that radiates and manifests in it. According to this, we'll also explain Sfira from the word Sefer, like the letters that come from the actual parchment. The letters, the kalim. The same thing, the revelations of Atzmus is the level of sapir, of clarity, and sefer, the book. I will just say one more thing. Yeah, this is a critical component. Because before we were saying that ACS letters are, even engraved letters, are also a level lower. Because they're letters. But they ultimately are rooted all in the Er HaBligvul. That's what he wants to say. They're all rooted there, except obviously the way they're there, they're not letters yet. They're just white parchment. Then they'll go to a state where will become 10 hidden spheres, which is still hidden. It's still not in the parchment yet. And then it's still engraved through and through. Then there'll come a tzimtzum, eish chera, which will put real dark. That's when the real ink will start coming in. So 10 hidden spheres is not even ink. I would say it's still conceptual. So the conceptual field of energy, there's the actual field of energy, there's then that's the white parchment, the white light. Then that allows for all possibilities. Then comes the 10 hidden spheres. That is that's like the engraved letters. It's still of the same substance, but now it's 10, not infinite. Then comes Eish Chera, a dark flame, that conceals it all, and the Kalim begin to do their job, and the ink starts filling in. And comes to Atzilus, it's written letters. Kalim of Atzilus is actually written letters. We have ink on parchment, and they're two separate entities, but they're one. The divine, it's one with the divine. Then in Bria and further, now it starts separating, where it doesn't even know that it's connected. Till the point where we are, where there's almost total disconnection.
I need a few more rounds in this collider.
What do you think about that?
Collider.
Okay, we'll stop here. Again, let me just say, we finished chapter 123, page 240.